So, in a church in Ghana, two pastors actually managed to convince their congregation of women to undress and take a shower at the pulpit and shit during the entire church service. Now, I don't know if it's just me that felt this, but the moment I saw the video clips on this, a certain song started ringing in my head, and it was more of a remix of a certain song. And it went like this. Toa nguo toa dada ulicho nacho wewe, Bwana anakuona mpaka moyoni mwako. Honestly, that was what started ringing in my head the moment I actually saw this video. And the thing is, like, this is a remixed version. So obviously the real song is a gospel song that we sing at church, and it usually says Toa ndugu, which is brother, not nguo, which is clothes. Although Bwana in this case did not necessarily mean God, but the pastor, because clearly he could really see a lot closer into their hearts than your typical pastor would. Although that said, like, this is part of the shit that makes atheists look at us in a very weird light. Like, is this the point where we've gotten to as religion, where we're willing to do anything just because the pastor does it? Like, this shit justifies a certain statement that a couple of my atheist friends usually like to use whenever they choose to describe Christianity and just religion in this part of the world, religion in Africa, religion in Kenya and shit. And they usually like to say that religion is opium for the poor. Now, the videos of these babes being washed and like taking a shower in church in like buckets and shit isn't exactly doing this a disservice. And on top of that, there was this thing that Desmond Tutu said while he was still alive. And it's a statement that's been said a lot of times across, multiple places, people and things. And it was this story that he said where he was like, when the white man came to Africa, Africans had the land and the white man had the Bible. So he told the Africans, let's bow down our heads and pray. And when he got done praying, we had the Bible, but they had the land. And considering that this was a man who was formerly a religious leader, like, that shit carries a fuck ton of weight. And when you look at what it is that a lot of Africans do in the name of Christianity, what a lot of Africans do because the pastor said it'll ensure their entry into heaven, or they'll be written in God's book of life, or it'll be their way of serving the church, or because, the word of the Lord said so, as if you can't exactly read the word of the Lord for yourself. Like, that shit usually drives people to do very, very stupid and unethical things. And while I know that I'm no saint myself, like, people need to learn to draw the line and actually think for themselves. And then, maybe just then, they will realize that just because they are told faith can beat logic, it doesn't mean that it should beat logic, and that faith is working in service of the pastor instead of the Father Lord above. But then again, who am I to say anything regarding religion and Christianity, because I need to remove the log from my eye and I need to put the podcast in your ears, which I probably should have started doing, which requires me to begin in my very orthodox style where I start by saying, welcome to Breaktime on Westside. Sorry, 1 second. Alright, let's run this again. Welcome to Breaktime on Westside, your number one Breaktime podcast, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. The man on the mic is a man who is clearly having problems removing that log, although, it sounds like it's coming out of his mouth, not his eye. He's a man whose new favorite workout is skipping leg day. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. The show is Tweetstreet, the show where we take a deep dive into Twitter, pull up a couple of tweets, and break them down a little bit. Now, as usual, if you know the drill, then you can sing it along with me because it almost sounds like a song. But if you don't know the drill, then you can listen to it. Then the next time you're listening to Tweetstreet, then you can sing along with that same drill because it sounds like a song. And it's a very simple drill. It's how it is that you can submit your tweets for me to look through, because if it's on Twitter, then there's a DM. If it's on Facebook, then there's a DM. And if it's on IG, there's also a DM. And it is a pretty simple drill, and it goes like this. You see that tweet, you like that tweet, you want us to discuss that tweet, you send that tweet. You send it to the DMs of @BagakaTheD, which happens to be my personal Twitter handle, and I will take it from there and I handle it accordingly. If it is on Facebook or on IG and it happens to be a screenshot, it happens to be a screen grab, then the DMs are open there as well, and you send it to at Breaktime on Westside on Facebook and at Breaktime on Westside on IG, and I will take them from there and I will handle them accordingly. Now, I want to get into the tweets real quick, but before we do that, first of all, Happy New Year. I know I forgot to do that when I was doing Battle of the Sexes, and I know some of you only listen to one show per week, or one show particularly. So for the sake of it being a new year for Tweetstreet specifically, then Happy New Year, Happy New 2022, and I wish you guys all the best. Now, moving it on, there's definitely a bunch of things from last year that need to be handled. First of all, there's the Dr. Dre and Nicole Young divorce. I definitely want to talk about that. Then there's also the new thing that just came up this week, which was the KFC fries shortage in Kenya, which I definitely love to talk about. And then there is Tristan Thompson getting another kid, or at least having the other baby confirmed to be his by his former trainer. Now, this is a bit of a dilemma, and in as much as I'd love to discuss some of these, I need to do a little bit of elimination. So I'm going to remove the KFC one because it doesn't necessarily relate to love, sex, and relationships. And I'll see if I can do two rants, or at least discuss two topics on the rant section before I get to the tweets. So I'm going to get on with Dr. Dre and Nicole Young's divorce. Now, I've spoken about it for a very long time. Y'all are probably tired of it, or at least some of you must be tired of hearing about it. And we thought that it was over, but apparently Dr. Dre, instead of doing the whole 300k thing that he's supposedly supposed to be doing, I think it was 300 or 400k, he decided that he was just going to settle for giving her a straight 100 mil, and then she just walks away, which I think sounds extremely good, especially when you think about that 900,000 entertainment allowance that she was talking about in her $2 million spousal support claim. Like, that's a bunch of them. She can do at least about 1,000 of those entertainment allowance months before she actually runs broke. But that said, I will leave it at that. Now let's move on to Tristan and Chloe. Now, Tristan Thompson broke the news that the paternity test was done for the kid that Marley Nichols had with him. Now, Marley Nichols was his trainer. Tristan Thompson is a basketball player and is the, boyfriend, husband, fiance, of Khloe Kardashian. So I'm sorry to the people that have been listening to this entire week's worth of episodes and they've just been listening to me talk about the Kardashian boyfriends having something about them. But anyways, back to the story. So he confirmed that the paternity test results were out and the kid was actually his. So he decided to take to IG and he posted on his story, and what he said was, and I quote, "Today, paternity test results reveal that I fathered a child with Mara Lee Nichols. I take full responsibility for my actions. Now that paternity has been established, I look forward to amicably raising our son. I sincerely apologize to everyone I've hurt or disappointed throughout this ordeal, both publicly and privately. Chloe, you don't deserve this. You don't deserve the heartache and humiliation I have caused you. You don't deserve the way I have treated you over the years. My actions certainly have not lined up with the way I view you. I have the utmost respect and love for you, regardless of what you may think. Again, I am so incredibly sorry." End quote. Now, first of all, I really want to get into the whole why did you have to tell us this, and yet, that's a you and your family type situation. But I'm going to kind of just leave it at that. I'm just going to leave it at that. This is a Kardashian thing. So I'm guessing the boyfriends were made to do the same exact thing. Inform the public because clearly people want to know. But that said, I do find it utterly surprising that Tristan actually got his trainer pregnant, because normally it's the trainer that stretches you out, not the other way around. And clearly for all of that to happen, somebody's pussy had to be stretched out. Just saying. And I don't think Tristan has a pussy. Just saying. But all in all, I feel like Khloe Kardashian is probably used to this shit right now. Like, Shorty sounds like she's probably used to it because she hasn't really said much about it. And I do kind of feel like Tristan does have a problem, because normally people would say, just go get a vasectomy. And yes, that probably would be the best option for you right now, you being Tristan. But at the same time, like, if this guy would say, I can't just stick to one woman, I like banging multiple different babes, like, why don't you just do that with Chloe then? Shorty's been looking different every single year on IG. Like, even her natural look and the pictures that she takes for magazines look completely different. They look like two separate people. So why is it that, you're looking at someone else and you're like, you know what, I just can't resist it? Like, you've been looking at different people the past few years you've been dating this woman. Like, damn. Although, then again, it could just simply be a case of the pussy that was there at the time, so he decided to do it. And also, at the same time, like, considering that I've been told that Chloe's workout techniques were supposedly fake, the whole workout program that she was giving was absolute bullshit, like, maybe he just wanted something real, like pussy. Like, maybe the pussy that he got from the trainer was actually real, and it had actually been doing Kegels in the way that it's supposed to be done, and not in a Khloe Kardashian fake trainer program type style. Although, that said, he is another black American celebrity to have multiple kids from multiple baby mamas, so I guess he should fall third in line, just like the number of kids he has, to Nick Cannon and then Future. Actually, no, to Future then Nick Cannon. Sorry, I forgot that one. But anyways, that said, I will leave typical NBA pro behaviors to typical NBA pros and move it on to the tweets. So on to our very first tweet of this episode. Having a baby with the wrong person has got to be the top 2 biggest mistakes you can make in your life. You know what? This tweet is almost a little too self-explanatory, so I'm even going to conjoin it with another one which said that having a kid by the right person is more important than having kids before 30. And I am going to take both of them and say that yes, of course, I agree with them. Like, that one is a little bit more standard, pretty simple, easy to kind of agree with. But I don't think people understand the magnitude of someone saying that these are the 2 worst mistakes in your life. Because the way babes are getting pregnant nowadays and they're choosing to keep the kid, like, that shit is wild. Like, that shit is wild on levels that I didn't even think should be possible. Because normally, like, what nature's always done since day one of us being humans, of a ton of us being animals and shit, is create the whole pre-selection that happens within the female's mind. So the lady has to pre-select before they can get the mate to sire children with. And nature's reasoning for that was pretty simple. You want to get the best genetic material such that you can raise offspring that will be stronger, faster, and better, and more immune to the same diseases that would probably take you down than you were. And, it was simple. Now, of course, over time, it became more than just having kids that were a lot less disease prone, and it became about ensuring their survival beyond just their ability to deflect certain diseases or come out stronger. So definitely, that's where things like financial security kind of come in nowadays. It's a little bit more complex of a thing that nature doesn't necessarily understand, but it still does kind of carry the same functions. So when you see a babe going and getting pregnant by a guy, say because she wants this guy to stick around with him, something that I find to be a very, very shitty thing to do. Not just manipulative, just generally shitty. And weirdly enough, there's a lot of babes that are still doing that, and there's gonna be more babes who'll still do that. You do find that it is quite a bit weird. Then also, there's babes that simply just go bang a guy raw, get pregnant, and they're like, you know what, I'm gonna keep the kid. Like, I tend to think that to a certain degree, they don't think through the entire magnitude of the problem that they've just given themselves. Because if you actually look through time, like, a lot of a child's development comes down to the parents' genetics and also the parents that raise them. Now, you can raise a good kid, but if this child was sired by a man who comes from a gene pool that have certain characteristics, then they will pick up on that gene pool. And worse still than that, if you are siring kids with a guy who is abusive, if you're siring kids with a guy that has no respect for you, that mistreats you, that treats you like shit, that treats other people like shit, then there's a very good chance that those kids will either end up being victims of partners that will treat them that way, or will end up being the partners that treat other people like shit like that, because they picked up that shit from their fathers. Now, if you turn the lens towards the mother or the future mother or the potential mother, now if you're putting your kids into someone and you can clearly see that they won't let go of the bottle, or they won't let go of drugs, or they have certain manipulative behaviors, then that shit will also translate. Like, not just from an action perspective, but also when you look at, how babes will treat themselves in terms of their health, like that shit translates quite well. Because if you find a babe who's taking alcohol while she's pregnant, she's smoking while she's pregnant, and then you end up with an underdeveloped, malformed child that's probably prone to illnesses that they probably shouldn't have been. Say there's no asthma in both your sides of the family, but this kid has asthma. Like, this is shit that will end up compounding, and you find that you'll end up having to pay hospital bills for years to come, simply because you ended up having a kid with someone who wasn't actually very conscious of the fact that they got pregnant. So in one way or another, this is actually true. And yes, having a kid before 30 is important. Like, I'll just add that bit. Having a kid before 30 is very important. From a medical perspective, from the little that I know in medicine, your most productive years as a babe are usually between the age of 25 to 30. But there's babes who've gone a little over 30 and had kids, and those kids are generally quite healthy, and they do actually do quite well. So maybe waiting a little bit longer while you find the right person, or at least find a good person, is definitely more important than trying to have kids and you end up having kids with the wrong person, regardless of gender, whether you're male, whether you're female. But either way, it will still come down to you. What's your idea of a good partner versus a bad one? Don't think that a good boyfriend will make a good father. Don't think a good girlfriend will make a good mother. Just saying. Anyways, that said, we should move it on. So on to our very next tweet. Please stop teaching women that a guy only sleeps with you if he likes you or finds you attractive. It's just not true. Instead, teach them to have consensual sex because they want to, because they're comfortable, because they're ready, because they're horny, etc. Alright, now, while I can sort of agree to a certain degree with what she says, like to like a 1% of a degree, I highly disagree with all of this shit. Like, I disagree with whatever this baby is actually saying. And the main reason why I'm disagreeing is because this is a mentality that's been pushed onto guys and is almost used to justify the idea that guys not only do bang just about anything as long as it's pussy that's been presented to them, but they should do it because it's pussy that's been presented to them. Because it's more of a scarcity mindset. It's a scarcity mindset, to say the least. Because think about it. Someone who has no access to food and they're hungry, you give them any opportunity to get access to food, they're going to take that food and they're going to eat it. Like, that's just how it is. And the thing is, yes, a majority of us guys will find it very hard to get a babe to bang. Like, that's true. But it doesn't mean that we will always hit anything whenever we get a chance. Yes, babes are a lot more selective than we are when it comes to the person that they're going to sleep with. And rightly so. There's consequences for that shit, and they tend to bear a huge brunt of those consequences. So nature will pretty much make sure that they have to be selective before they bang anything. And anyone who goes against that rule, you find that the social fabric of society will make them suffer for that. Now, that said, guys are also selective. We're a lot less selective than babes are, definitely, and our selection criteria is a lot different than how babes will have it, but we are actually selective. Now, with the babes, there's definitely that whole thing of, probably not giving it up too easy, or definitely, choosing a suitable candidate based on certain parameters. But for us guys, when we're thinking of someone to bang, we'll be a lot less selective because, one, our sexual prowess is usually on the line whenever we go to bang a babe. So if we can do a good job, then we'll definitely, have our name out there, which is why we'll be comfortable not just banging you as a babe, but we'll bang you. And if all 4 of your friends want to be banged as well, we probably wouldn't mind doing that shit. Now, if you look at babes, they're a lot more selective because the society that we live in probably won't allow them to do that and be revered for it. So the idea of her banging me, then banging my best friend, seems like a bit of a far-fetched idea, and it seems like a fairly wrong thing to do. So in one way or another, like, guys are selective. Like, there's definitely babes that we won't smash, there's babes that will even struggle to get hard for, but we are selective. This narrative of guys will bang anything is wrong. Like, that's one of the biggest lies that's told to babes. We are selective. We won't be as selective as you guys, but we are actually selective. And I definitely will actually get into this on an entire episode of Battle of the Sexes at some point in the future, because this needs to change. But anyways, that said, let us move it on to our final tweet of this episode. If toxic men turn you on, be emotionally mature enough to admit that. But recognize you can't turn a narcissist into a nurturer, and you can't make a husband out of a hoe. That man is for the streets, so stop trying to build a home with him. Now, I feel like this one is self-explanatory more so for guys, because for us guys, it's not usually you can't make a husband out of a hoe. For us guys, it's usually you can't turn a hoe into a housewife. That's something that a lot of guys say nowadays, and I think it makes this very, very self-explanatory. But weirdly enough, a lot of people will be toxic, and because of the whole playing around with, the really, really good and the really, really bad, will usually end up having people stick that. And I can get why they can be addictive to certain people, especially if you had, say, issues with the family, or like, you used to watch your parents fighting and shit, then toxic might be normal for you. And you might actually be addicted to the toxic kind of lifestyle, because it's not very hard to see how it is that people can be addicted to having a toxic partner for an extended period of time. Like, you think about it, or at least the way I usually think about it in two ways. There's like the whole heart monitor that you'll see in like the ICU, and like there's like the number line. Now, when you look at the heart monitor, it usually kind of does give a pretty good representation of how a relationship is supposed to work. So, you go up, and y'all are enjoying the highs and everything's all good, and then there's gonna be the lows. So you're definitely gonna have your moments where you're gonna fight. You're gonna have your moments where you might even consider breaking up. You're gonna have those moments where it's like bad. But eventually, for the people that get to stay in the relationship longer, especially if you guys are like really good together, you'll find that you guys reach a certain point of equilibrium. Now, you can represent that on a number line where you have like a 0 in the middle, and then there's a positive and there's a negative side. So obviously there's the positives, but there's also the negatives, and they don't stray that far from where the 0 is. Now, the 0 is where contentment is, and I'd say probably the happiest relationships are a little bit towards the positive, but still very close to the 0. Now, with toxic relationships, it's pretty much the extremes of both. You have someone who's hitting the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, and they're doing that so frequently. And on one side, there's like the adrenaline rush of, oh, I love this person, I really care about them. But also on the other side, they're like, oh my goodness, how could you do this to me? Oh, what kind of a person do I have? Oh, I don't want to be in this relationship anymore. Then they come back and then they rectify that shit. Maybe some makeup sex is involved, and then all of a sudden you're like, damn, like my shorty can be problematic or my nigga can be a problem, but I love him for this, and I definitely want to continue being with him. So in one way or another, it is very interesting how toxic relationships are, and they can be very addictive. And I do think it takes a lot for somebody to cut that string, and what actually cuts the string the best is usually time away. And eventually at some point you can actually move on from it. But yes, as it has been said, if you are turned on by toxic people, then it might be a little bit hard for you to get someone who isn't toxic and actually be turned on by them. But it is possible, and for the sake of your mental stability, for the sake of your growth, it's probably better for you to not get somebody toxic. Although then again, maybe toxic is actually a thing that should be embraced by people. I don't know. I might be wrong about that, I might be right about that. So I want your thoughts on this. The DMs are open on Twitter. It is at BagakaTheD, which happens to be my personal Twitter handle. On Facebook and on Instagram, it happens to be at Breaktime on Westside. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end. And if you are listening through Castbox, feel free to drop your thoughts and comments below, and I will attend to them accordingly. If you are listening through some app that allows for ratings and reviews, a rating and or review will be highly appreciated. And I will catch you guys on the next break.